Before we begin, thank you very much to Sparky for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for helping out the channel and making sure I can keep doing this every day for all of you. If you would like to pitch in and keep the daily content going, then please, by all means, consider checking the link in the description below and signing up yourself. I ask as little as $1 a month. And it does genuinely help me produce all of this for you every single day, including this video, which is a Patreon request. My most generous patrons do get to make requests on this channel, and someone actually asked me to do a little bit of creative work. Frankly, a lot of people have asked me to do some creative work, which is one reason why some of this is a little bit behind. It's a lot of creative stuff at the same time. I feel like I'm writing whole novels at this point. But they wanted me to create some kind of backstory and some kind of character information for the Fossilizers, because while they are an interesting sect of Transformers, they have next to no fiction whatsoever. Barely a blurb on the back of the boxes, nothing really from Hasbro officially. They don't even do like website bios anymore. Like there's literally no way you can actually see what this character is anymore. You know, it's just a pile of bones, and hopefully it looks cool to kids. But we as collectors, we are interested in the character as well, and it's unfortunate that some of these Izers don't have character to them. So we're gonna make some. Today, I'm flexing my creative writing muscle to actually create some fiction behind the Fossilizers specifically. First off, before we get to the characters themselves, we have to fictionalize what exactly are the Fossilizers, because it is a very unusual brand of Transformer. So here is what I have come up with. Right now, I am under the idea that Fossilizers are a Decepticon experiment, wanting to create their own brand of Dinobot to have the same kind of power that the Autobots enjoyed with them, but still in their own style. They have developed nanomachine technology that will allow them to integrate into the fossils and the bones of these dinosaur skeletons and refashion them into something strong enough to, to take damage and do damage to Cybertronian forms. Reinforce them with Cybertronian alloys. Recondition them to actually be able to transform and take on a personality. It's moderately successful. The result they get is, well, terrifying. It is also impractical and highly unstable. They cannot transform as normal Transformers would, and while all of them are supposed to be programmed for villainy, because of the weird nature of this new experimental like nanite conversion thing, it has not gone over very well. As a result, there's even some mutations amongst them that they had not anticipated. Things that had affected the bones long time ago, but are now brought to life and given a little bit more of a pronunciation than when they were just standard bones. So they get put into stasis. A little bit too dangerous to set out on the battlefield. However, this is the ship that's involved in the Transformers Kingdom storyline, or at least the storyline of the toys. So this is the crew that ends up in prehistoric Earth and causing chaos in this iteration of the Beast Wars. So just for sheer numbers, they're reawakened. However, not all of them are loyal to what the Decepticons want. Like we said, this was an experimental process. Didn't exactly produce what they wanted. So you had some that did not agree with the Decepticons and Predacons and chose to join the Maximals. You even have a couple who waited till they got back to Cybertron to join the Wreckers. So we're going to go into all of that and how these guys integrated into the Beast Wars themselves. You'll excuse me if I pop around a little bit. I'm trying to go in order. We're going to start with all of our Predacons. And that means we start with Vertebreak. So again, with no character biography or any sort, I have to go on just character design. And, things that strike me are the goggle look that the character has to her head sculpt. And then, of course, like the super dark bones to her. So where is her skill level? Like, where is her ability? And then I have to go by the name to see if the name informs me on anything that could possibly draw characterization. I have her at the moment a cold, silent stalker type with all the confidence in the world. She's very small, very agile, and equipped with optics and servos that make her ideal for sneaking around during night missions. Essentially kind of like a stealthier version of Rat Trap. She's good at getting behind enemy lines. She's good at scoping out potential threats, eliminating potential threats, as well as finding places to ambush unwitting Maximals. This is a trait I think I've used before, but it's still one that I like, and I think the name makes it appropriate. I want to make her skilled in spotting fracture points across an enemy, making finding the vulnerable spots in their construction that she can target. It's how she makes up for her lack of size and overall power, because she can see the spots where her attacks are going to be the most damaging, little flaws in their construction that she can take advantage of. On top of night missions, she's also great any place the dark allows her to sneak around, whether that is, shady jungles or even in tar pits, if they're in the right location. She very rarely speaks. When she does, she's very blunt and very abrasive. She's the type that will tell you exactly what your flaw is, no matter how much she knows it's going to hurt you. So most of the Predacons are happy to just let her stay silent and keep to herself. Just keep doing your mission, be good at what you do, and just kindly leave us alone. And that is Vertebreak. We move on to Paleotrex. So I went with the creepiness of the design, as well as how creative a lot of people have been with his overall construction in what you can build. So right now, I have him similar to a Rampage type, where he is the type to prey on the fear of his enemies, being fully aware that his presence in robot mode and in beast mode are very unsettling, and he revels in that. His plans that he makes to take on Maximals generally revolves around psychological warfare. He prefers to take advantage of mental weaknesses rather than physical weaknesses, trying to unnerve an enemy before attacking to try and get some leverage and advantage in particular one-on-one situations. The result is someone who does a lot of studying on his enemies to figure out what exactly makes them tick. Now, there are tougher enemies on the Maximal side that don't really allow for this. Enemies like Primal and Dinobot are essentially fearless, and it's those situations where he does accept becoming the weapon of someone else. If him by himself cannot strike fear into an enemy, he will turn into the weapon of another that will strike terror. As long as he's the one causing the fear, he is loving it. The irony to that is if he does end up in one of those situations where he is facing someone who is literally fearless and he has no option to weaponize with somebody, that's when he gets afraid. That's where he learns what he's afraid of. So, a master of terror, but not to the degree of Rampage. Not monstrous terror, more just like more playing to genuine fears and psychology. So it's a little bit of a smarter Predacon. As opposed to Ractonite, I kind of wanted to avoid the dumb lug, but I kind of liked what I came up with on this one. So I do have him as being on the dull side. The difference here is that he is aware that he is not the brightest Predacon on the battlefield. He is, however, fiercely loyal to Megatron, and leaves all the planning to him. He is a yes man. He is just follow the orders as orders are laid out. Perfectly fine with that, because he can't think of anything better. He does pride himself on being unstoppable and unbreakable. In his mind, It is an honor to serve as Megatron's last most reliable defense that cannot be broken or penetrated. So he's often called on to create armor, and that's where he excels. His shell is far stronger than most of these fossilizers, making him nigh invulnerable when he turns into the armor for somebody else. That said, he does have a tactic he likes, which is charging straight ahead in beast mode. And he prides himself on being unstoppable when he does. When he gets to full speed, the only thing that's going to stop him is crashing into his target. On the other hand, if he is unsuccessful, if he misses for whatever reason, he's pretty much, ironically, boned. At that point, he's on his own, and he is admittedly not great at one-on-one combat. Not great in melee combat in the least. So that's where he gets himself into trouble. But as long as he's just on the defensive, he's hard to get through. So, here's a fun one. So we're going to be a little bit Deus Ex with this one. So Skelivore here, I want to say, just through happenstance, destiny, or whatever, this is the same skeleton that was scanned when Beast Wars Megatron took his beast mode. The result of which leaves him with some traits of Beast Wars Megatron as a residual, activated by all of the Cybertronian scanning tech that linked him to Megatron, actually coming to life when these nanites start reconfiguring him. The result is this Energon-infused skeleton that has all the tactical mind of Beast Wars Megatron, but doesn't have the physical strength to back it up. This means he relies on manipulation. None of his Predacon allies actually trust him, even his fellow Fossilizers, but he's silver enough with his tongue that he actually can talk people into cooperating with him, or at least trusting him for the moment. He's very good at keeping in people's good graces, despite the fact you probably can't rely on him, or you at very least know he's up to something. What he is up to is the fact that while he does feign loyalty to the Beast Wars Megatron, he's still in contact with the G1. Because remember, this is Kingdom. They kind of coexist in this edition of the timeline. But in such, he is giving G1 Megatron everything he needs to know about what Beast Megatron's got going on, and then a little bit extra to sow some distrust. He knows two Megatrons can't coexist. This is going to come to blows eventually. And right now, the plan is to just wait for the right moment and then become the weaponry for G1 Megatron to slay Beast Megatron. Once he does, Megatron don't care about any of the Predacons, so Skelivore will take control all on his own. He is technically the one who killed Megatron after all, so the Predacons are his by right. And if that doesn't work, there's always going to be another scheme, and another scheme, and another scheme. He has to work mentally. He has to be smarter and more clever and stay 3 steps ahead of everybody to get what he wants. Because on the physical power level, only his weapon modes can actually access all that Energon infusion that makes him his lovely purple color. So I like that. I like having a little bit of a... I like the idea of, like, that skeleton in particular took on a little bit more of Megatron than anyone expected. Dracodon is our first Maximal Fossilizer. The only thing we had about this one is radioactive green. So even the wiki is taking that literally because he needs something. He needs something to characterize him. So, okay, radioactive bone. We'll say like he fossilized near some, like uranium or something. Now to the Decepticons, his more radioactive nature was basically seen as absolutely useless. But in the past with the Maximals, his extreme adaptation to radiation makes him ideal for scouting through Energon as well as investigating raw deposits. Even in robot mode, he has no fear whatsoever of Energon radiation, which makes him perfect for being the one to segment and prepare Energon for transport. Again, I'm going with the goggle look, so that's kind of where I'm going with him. A little bit of a geologist. Because of his extreme radiation exposure, he is able to mimic certain spectrums of radiation, which actually allows him to duplicate energon readings, which can allow them to lure Predacons into dangerous positions and ambushes. That's another thing with him. He plays dirty. He plays dirty. In his weapon attacks, he can actually project that exact same radiation that can actually trigger energons, that can actually, in higher doses, trigger energon surges in Predacons faster than just plain raw energon exposure, forcing them into beast mode and gaining an upper hand in a fight. It's dirty tactics like this that I would like to think has made him fast friends with Rat Trap, in vast difference to how Rat Trap and Dinobot get along, because Dinobot was a former Pred. This is a former Decepticon, but Rat Trap is highly amused by all of this. So this one actually has Rat Trap's trust. These two get along. All right, next on the list we have Wingfinger, another male Maximal Fossilizer. I can't get around the ninja thing here. He has to be some form of ninja, right? So I don't want to make him just typical ninja, right? I want him to be well studied in the ways of ninja and ninjutsu, but he is an absolute chatterbox. He is always looking for company. He always wants to go and pal around on missions together, not necessarily to just help fight. He just likes being around people, So it is a ninja who is exceptionally poor at stealth. He gets by solely on incredible levels of skill. He's very fast, very sharp attacks, very hard to predict, and because of his svelte nature, actually really hard to hit. You get, if you end up in melee combat with him, it's hard to connect on him because there's just no mass to hit. So he does take advantage of that in when he actually does get into a fight. He is one who prefers to stay intact and rather tends to try to avoid fossilizing and weaponizing as much as he can. So, but because of his skill level, he is actually brought along on missions, because even the Maximals who don't want to chatterbox along with them, he's so good in a fight. Yeah, yes, you can come along. I will put up with it. I will shut my audio receptors off if it means I get your blade in a battle. Now, in order to fly, obviously he has nothing that grants him any kind of actual flight. But remember, he is built from the original Decepticons, and something that sets him apart from the rest of his brood, he actually retains the G1 Decepticon's ability to fly with anti-gravity tech, which gives him not only the ability to fly, but also his allies get to fly when he combines with them. He's also very clever about how he uses the gravity tech. He actually uses it to propel his own attacks, whether they are in robot mode or in weaponized mode, which makes the attacks hit harder, swing faster, be a lot harder to predict and dodge. Makes him exceptionally dangerous in a fight. Let's see, who's next? Tricranius is next. So I went with the name, and I kind of went back to the G1 idea of characters with head names tended to either be super dumb or super smart. I already had one version of this character in this mold, super dumb. Now we have to go to the super smart side. So what do you do with a fossilizer made of lava? He is a highly intelligent weaponsmith for the Maximals, using his own body that is constantly superheated and contains its own source of magma he can replenish. He uses that to forge melee weaponry or repair existing melee weapons to give them an edge in close quarter combat. When he himself is in combat, he can use that same superheat to actually melt the chassis of his target mid-swing. So just that instant before that weapon hits, that heat hits that metal, softens it up, and now you're cutting straight through the core. It's a very vicious way of attacking, especially for someone who prides himself more on his creations rather than his destructive abilities. It's actually to his detriment. His nature is to his detriment because a lot of times he fears that his own heat will damage his fellow Maximals, so he spends a lot of time on his own. I kind of expect that, like Wingfinger being, also a fossilizer that can't really be hurt by the high temperatures, probably the only company he ever really gets. And by the same thing, it does mean that in some situations, in jungles, in areas with life forms around, his presence could actually be potentially more dangerous than if he were to just stay in his smithery and just keep making weapons for everybody. So he kind of prefers to stay on his own no matter what. And the result, in the case where he does have to weaponize with one of his companions, it's usually an Autobot who gets to wield him that can handle the high temperatures. But it does make him a little bit different, a loner by circumstance, unfortunately. So I know if this really was Tricranius, this really would make me feel for the character. We got one more girl to talk about, and that is Spindle. So by design, she was supposed to be super fierce, super dangerous, really intimidating as a Decepticon. But that's the opposite of how her nature turned out. I very much wanted her to look, really frightening in her robot mode, but really she's just kind of a really kind and dedicated character. She is very dedicated to the cause of the Autobots and Maximals. She's very much willing to fight Decepticons and Predacons. That said, she idolizes Impactor, to the point where she even takes on his color scheme and doesn't really want to work with anyone else but him. It's a weird dichotomy because it's not in her spark. It's not in her spark to be as ruthless, and battle ready as he is. In fact, most of the time she prefers to weaponize in order to avoid having to fight directly herself. It's more like she wishes she could be more like Impactor because she sees what he is capable of and the rank that he has gotten up to. So it's hard for her. I've tried to make her kind of a conflicted character in this. As far as her own skills and abilities, she has this set of spine bones that comes off of her shoulder. And in her case, it can be used similar to that of a tuning fork, where she can use it to create sonic vibrations in various strengths and purposes. She can use it for things like echolocation, for instance. Or, if she needs to be mean about it, she can use it to project harsh sound waves that are going to wreck someone's audio system. So, and if it's the downtime, she can even play music on it. So she is a bit of a creative at heart. So I want her to be vastly different than the rest of these. Most of these are just battle-ready fossilizers. I want one that's more subdued. I want one that's more on the nice side of things. As opposed to our last member, Master Dominus, the second of the Wreckers. This is kind of my Dinobot, a hothead with an authority problem. This is someone who is, the only reason he left the Decepticons is because he didn't agree with their ideology of, domination over other species. But the destruction and the ruthlessness, oh, he was all about that. He was all about that, which gives him a perfect place in the Wreckers. Ideally, his place in the Wreckers would be leading it because he doesn't like anyone ordering him around. He wants to be the one in control, as the name would probably suggest. But even though he really does want Impactor out of the way, he does have a soft spot for Spindle. He does have a soft spot for her. And she's usually the only one that can keep him calm and keep him towing the line for the rest of the Wreckers. Right now, he is happy in his position of he gets to cause mayhem. He gets to deal destruction, even in his weaponized forms. He's much slower in those forms, but he specializes in being very heavy, brute force weapons, big hammers and things like that. So he gets his enjoyment. But it's not exactly what he's after. But, hard to keep Impactor down. So in his role he goes. And that's going to do it. Those are your Fossilizers. The only one I left out was Transmutate, which of course we already have characterization for. So it's just kind of an odd way for her to show up. But for the rest of them, that's the story. Let me know if you enjoyed it below, if you had any different ideas. I'm sure everyone is headcanon something for their favorite Fossilizer. And who knows, when we get done with all the Armorizers, maybe we'll do this with them as well. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.